to a bonus YouTube-only edition of Fantasy Baseball today on Thursday, January 29th. I am Frank Stampfl, and we are here for a unique episode, something we have never done before, a draft software tutorial. And you know that I am not the person to walk you through this. So I brought on Tanner Bell to help us do exactly that. Tanner, welcome to the show. Thank you for your time.
Yes, thank you for having me. Glad to be here. I will do my best to take us through this interesting topic.
Yeah, so normally I am the host of this show, but for the majority of today's episode, Tanner will be the host. He'll be walking us through this, and any questions that I have that come up along the way, I will just kind of like butt in and interrupt everything that you're showing everybody, and hopefully we all learn together. Last year, entering 2025, one of my New Year's resolutions was to learn how to use draft software and incorporate it into my drafting. And I never got around to doing it, so we pushed it on to 2026, and here we are. Tanner is the co-author of the book, The Process, by the way, along with Jeff Zimmerman, who we've had on the show in the past. And you can follow Tanner on X at SmartFantasyBB. There is no probably better endorsement for your product than the fact that you are an overall champion. The Great Fantasy Baseball Invitational, you won in both 2021 and 2024. So I think that's pretty impressive. And again, pretty good endorsement of the product.
Yeah, and I think like what we'll get into is just I think having something like this is not the end all be all, but it's definitely an important input to have in your process, for lack of a better word, so that you can make better decisions all throughout the year through draft season and even weekly moves as you go along the season.
And I know that there are a lot of different draft softwares out there, but to be completely honest, full transparency, I know a lot of smart fantasy players, high stakes players who use this exact product. So that's why I wanted to get Tanner in here to show us how to use it. And what's interesting is you have it for both Roto category leagues and you have one for head-to-head points league. So I know that will kind of help out our entire audience because we have people who play in all different types of formats. So that definitely will be helpful. Before we get into the nitty gritty, let's get into where people can actually find the tools, find the book that you have co-authored. It is smartfantasybaseball.com. Again, for those watching here, you can see I pulled it up on the screen, and we'll work our way from the top down. You have the automated SGP ranking Excel tool, which is the draft software. That's $17.99 if people want to check that out. You have the points league ranking tool. That's also $17.99, has already been updated for 2026. You have a projection aggregator. That is $9.99. The Process, the 2026 edition. So this is the appendix version, the updated version of the book for $14.99. And then you have the full version, which includes like the backstory and everything else you need to know, along with the 2026 updates. That is $19.99. So again, you can check that out over at smartfantasybaseball.com. I believe this is the part where I will hand it all over to you, Tanner. This is your domain. You are now the host. I will butt in where I see fit, but obviously this is your product and you know it inside and out. So I will pull up your screen here and we can all watch along. The floor is yours.
Yeah, and maybe before I start actually giving a demonstration, I think it will be helpful to just lay a little groundwork, more detail about why I think this is an important way to think about things. And it has to do with using projections as a starting point, and then we're going to step those through a valuation or ranking process so that we can kind of convert those raw numbers of home runs, steals, batting average, whatnot, into something that we can use to actually rank players in like an objective way and not being so subjective about just sliding guys up and down our rankings. I think that having that anchor and going through this process is just a really good way so that you avoid biases and making errors or not making optimal decisions as you go through the year. So we'll kind of step through that process. What I am going to show you is the standings gains points tool. And that's probably the most common way of ranking players from projections or converting like a projection into a dollar value, which is what this tool will do. But there are other methods. There's like Z-score and percentage valuation. there's different ways of converting that projection into a value. This is one, but it's the one that I'm the most comfortable with because it's kind of been around historically. I like the way that the math works. It makes sense to me. But there are other ways. All the different ways kind of get you into about the same area. They're going to kick out players in a ranking that are really somewhat similar. You might have guys that move up or down a little bit based on the system that you use, but for the most part, it's going to be pretty recognizable. And if you were to buy this tool, it comes preloaded with the standings gains points for, I think I have the main event in there. So a standard 15 team league is what it is based on, but you can also change it to be working on a 12 team league. There's ways you can figure out your standings gains points from your league's history that we could talk about too. But what it does is it just kind of looks at last year's standings, figures out what you need to move up or down those standings, how many home runs, steals, how much your ratios need to change, that kind of thing. And based on that, how much you can move up or down, it converts the projection into a value. It does convert it out into a dollar value, which is helpful, I think, even if you're not playing in an auction, just to have some kind of measure to quote or talk about or keep in mind. So, and the values are going to look consistent to if you ever do hear people talking about auctions. So whether you're in an auction or not, a $30 player is a really good player, and this is going to kick out values that are similar to what you would hear people talking about in an auction league. So, with that said,
we can actually pause there for a second, Tanner, because I do just want to go over, I think, a little bit more about the SGP and standing gains points, because people might have heard that term on other podcasts before, and they might be, trying to figure out what it means. And you did explain it, but I guess if we can go a little bit further into it, it's basically how many of a specific category you needed to move up in a category, to move up a point, to move up a roto point. So from the 6th place team in home runs to the 7th place team in home runs, like how many home runs did I need to gain that extra standing point in home runs? So that's exactly, and for every category, that's what we mean. That's what we're talking about when we talk about SGP. I think I got that right.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I scrolled here to the area in the file. So there's a couple of settings tabs, if you will, that we have in the spreadsheet. One's on this league setup, where these blue cells are the values of what you just said. They are what it takes to move up one spot in the standings based on, I think this is main event. So in a 15 team league, this is what it would take to move up one category in home runs is 5.76 home runs. One standing spot in batting average is about 1 point. Pitching is very tight for wins these days. 2 wins is going to move you up over somebody. So that's what it's trying to do, is look at last year's standings and kind of take into account how tight they would have been, because the MLB environment's changing fairly frequently these days, just with how often pitchers are, how long they're going into games, injuries, ball changes, whatnot. So this is looking at last year's standings, and it's saying 2 wins would have moved you up 1 spot. And then it figures out from the projections how much a player is stats are over the replacement level, and really converts that into how many standings gains points that player is worth, how much they would move you up in the standings, and then converts that into a usable dollar value that you can reference.
Got it. So where do you actually, you said that this sheet that you have set up is based on the main event from last year. So that is a 15 team roto league with an overall component. Where do you go to just set the standings that you want, right? I assume you're using just like all the first place values, or do you put in the values of every different place within the league? And I guess where do you do that in the sheet?
Yeah. So I try to make it a bit digestible. So like this comes with an instruction guide, and it gives you a 15 team and 12 team league numbers to put in here.
Okay.
These are calculated from you're right that they're from the NFBC, which has that overall component. What is nice about that is that you get a ton of leagues. So one knock on standings gains points is like if I'm in my own home league and I just, have 9 or 11 other guys and we're in a league, and maybe there's turnover in it, maybe one year we're 10 teams, one year we're 12, it's a little bit hard to, you could argue that those standings are not really going to be representative because it's just one small group of guys, one league. There's turnover, differences in rules, differences in the number of teams. So that might make it not so representative. Why I like to use the NFBC is because you do get such a nice big population of leagues. So you're not going to be too swayed if a couple of people quit in a league or you have a really tough league or a really weak league. It's going to average all that out and give you a good representative sample of what standings should be like in a 12 or 15 team league. If you did want to calculate this yourself, I do have a tool on my website that's free, that you could kind of go through and type out the standings in your league. It's like an Excel file, and you can type out the standings and it will give you what these numbers would have been.
Got it.
But I think, again, I try to keep it focused here on, and I give in the instructions what a 12 or 15 team would be. And really, it doesn't change rankings too much until you start to get into like AL only or a lot more teams. Then you could see really significant swaying of people's values. But then maybe to go back to one other thing that you said about how you're looking to improve by adding like this to your skill set. This might be a lot to take on if it's like totally new to somebody. And I don't think you need to take on the whole thing all at once either. I think having just a goal of like incrementally maybe starting with this, even if you're not, maybe your league's 10 teams. I think if you threw the 12 team numbers in here and started using this, it's going to make you better than you may have been before, I'd still argue. Because you're not going to see that much of a difference in player valuations, just by going from a 10 team to a 12 team. So
Got it. Sounds good. Let's keep it going.
all right. So this is built in Excel. So there is a couple disclaimers I'll give there. Like you do need to be somewhat familiar with spreadsheets. And if you're not, I think it's still manageable. I try to make it pretty easy to use. There is a probably way too detailed of instruction manual, and I can help answer questions if they come up as well via email. But you probably want to have a little bit of experience with spreadsheets, just navigating around, copying, pasting. You don't really have to do too many things. This is pretty pre-built to make things easy, which is why I think people use it. I kind of built it out of a need myself, because if you have ever been somebody that wanted to build your own draft spreadsheet and you start every year from scratch, it's a really overwhelming and time consuming process. It could take days to get it to the way that you want it. And this really, what it's designed to do is let you just go download the inputs that you would want to use. So it's pretty flexible in that it can take probably just about any projection set that someone wanted to throw at it and get them in here pretty easily. It can get ADP in here pretty easily, so you have that to reference. And then depending on the format of the draft that you're in, it can also import your draft results. So like at this time of year, if you're in a slow draft, rather than having to go through and mark off like 30 players between every one of your picks, if you're at the end, then you can just kind of download the draft results, paste them in, and then all the players will get marked off that are taken so that you can focus in on who's left. So it's really that exercise of like downloading projections, bringing them in, downloading ADP, bringing them in. And if you are in a slow draft or even during the season, you can download the current rosters, and then it'll leave who's left to draft or who's available in free agency for you to focus in on looking who's remaining in the pool for you to take. So what I'll show you here is on the right hand side of my screen, I've downloaded a decent amount of example files that we could throw in here just to take a look. And I can show you how it would be configured. So I did download steamer hitter and pitcher projections, and from Fangraphs, they come out in this CSV format. And so I'm going to just kind of open this file and then move this data over into my spreadsheet. So what I would do is I think the fastest way to do it is to make a new tab. I kind of already have some steamer stuff in here, but if I pick all this and delete it, so if I made a blank steamer hit tab, and now I want to just go, I might use some keyboard shortcuts here that I'll try to help call out. But if I use one that you're like, how did you just do that? Let me know.
Yeah.
An easy way to pick everything in a file is just to hit Control A, or otherwise you might just be like kind of scrolling around and clicking and dragging with your mouse really long. So there's about 5 keyboard shortcuts that I know that are pretty powerful. So Control A is going to pick everything in this spreadsheet. And I'm going to just copy this and paste it into the file. So I brought the projections in. Now what I can go do is go to those settings tabs that we had in the beginning and just show you how to like connect to what we just brought in. Maybe before I do that, I'll just show you if in the Fangraphs projections, if you download those, to the far right of that file, they give you 2 columns that are ID numbers for these players. And this is an important concept I would want you to understand. And it comes into play for guys named like Luis Garcia or Max Muncy, where there's more than one of them of the same name. And so it's important if you do get a projection set, ideally you want it to have an ID number in it. And a lot of progress has been made in recent years of getting these IDs in here. Even Fangraphs now includes Major League Baseball's own player ID. And then they have, would be what I would call the Fangraphs ID. And this would be Major League Baseball's player ID. And the good thing about this is it gives you the distinction between which Max Muncy you're talking about, because otherwise you don't want to get confused about the stat line of one versus the other. But this will make sure that it's accurate. The other problem with using names, so some projection sets will just have names, which is fine. It'll work for like 98% of the players. But then there's other reasons why an ID could get wrong. I can't think of a better example off the top of my head, but there's a player whose name I think is CJ Kafus.
Yeah.
Sometimes CJ is C.J. or with a period, and sometimes it's just CJ. And if you're trying to like connect to this player and find him, just going on the name when you have differences like that will make players like that not work. Or sometimes you have juniors or the thirds or whatnot, and those subtle differences can make a certain amount of players not work. But if you can get an ID system, that's what you want to go off of. So Fangraphs nicely includes this for us. Let's pay attention here. This column header says MLB AM ID. I think that's MLB Advanced Media ID. That's what that means. So now if I come over to this import setup tab here, anywhere in the spreadsheet, if you see a blue cell, you're kind of meant to type in it. And if it's a red cell, it's like a formula, don't type in it because you might break something. So again, an example of what I'm trying to like make things easier for people to do. So that tab that we brought the projections in, it was called Steamer Hit. And so what I'm going to do here is it's already kind of filled out, but right here, it's asking you like, what is the tab name that your hitter projections are on? For us, it's Steamer Hit, so I don't have to change anything here. But if sometimes I'll bring in a new one and I'll put a date on it. Like if I had one that said, the 27th is the day that I downloaded these. If I put that date in here, I might type whatever my tab name is. I just got to be sure to type here. Okay. Then the next most important thing is over here. What it's saying is on your hitter projections, these are like the columns that we mostly are going to care about. in trying to, rank a player. What is the header? What is the text at the top of that column? And so we said it was MLB Advanced Media ID. So MLB AM ID is what is here. So this is kind of looking like it's working. And right here, it's saying, okay, I found that. I found it in column BV. This is an example of where, like, if you had to build this yourself, you might have to like use a lot of formulas or build this out. But really all you've got to do is like type in the tab name and make sure your column headers are right. And then it can kind of find everything and make it work. So the other important thing here is you have to tell it what ID system are you using. So we are using MLB ID, but let's just say for argument's sake that we wanted to use that Fangraphs ID, which was in the column right next to it. So instead of this, I could say, why am I not seeing Fangraphs ID in here? Oh, it's right here. Duh. Okay. So Fangraphs ID is the system that I want to use. But now I have to make sure that like what the system that I've chosen is what the column header is, but this is not correct here. So I need to actually go get the column header for that other one. So that's, if I go back to the projections, that's just player ID is that column header.
Got it.
So this is the most important thing. So if I come back here and say that column header is player ID, it finds it in column BU. Now, if you do make a mistake, like let's say I had a space in here or something, it's going to say, hey, I can not find your player ID column. And that's really important. So you need to fix it. So if you see a warning like that, it's going to try to tell you that something's wrong. It's saying it can't find the column. There's no letter. But if we go back here and correct that to just not have a space, everything starts to work. Okay. That's it for getting in the projection. So you go download it, you copy them, paste them into here on a blank tab or something. Say what tab they're on. Make sure your ID system that you're going to use is selected, and then really make sure that header here is correct. For the most part, all the rest is universal, like especially for offense. So plate appearance is always going to have like PA above it. I don't know of a projection system that doesn't use one of these codes for offense. Pitching, there is one that is sometimes ambiguous, which is strikeouts. Sometimes it's K and sometimes it's SO. So you have to be a little careful on that one. And I have a warning in here like, hey, why don't you double check what column they're going to use for strikeouts for pitchers? Make sure. And you can see that it's found it. So it's right here in this example. But I do have another little problem here. I said that I'm going to use Fangraphs ID, but I didn't change my pitcher one. So I need to make sure this says player ID. But that's the most important, and I would say probably the hardest part is to do what I just showed you, which is really just like a coordination exercise and being careful. Like, what's my tab name? What column of it is the ID header? And what system is that? And if you kind of make sure that that's all set up correctly, you should be pretty good. And the way you'll know, so then if you start going to some of these other tabs in here, like hitter ranks, you can see these are a little bit small, but you can see that it's pulling in projections for players. If you did not do it right, so let's say I just had a bad player ID column in here. That's not thinking for some reason. Oops. There we go. It wasn't recalculating itself. So once it recalculated, you can see it's like, okay, I can't find that. Now if I come over to hitter ranks, there's nothing here. So you're gonna know pretty quickly if something's not right. So if I come back and correct that, everything is good now. So And this is a lot. This is, just a lot of stats in here. I think it will all kind of make sense as you go along. And as you go to the right, that's when you'll get more into the rankings and the dollar values. So there's a column for rank or a column for dollar value. And this is where some familiarity with Excel will be really helpful, because you like little things like, okay, I want to resort by my rankings. I'm just going to click this drop down and sort. I did it the wrong way. I was going to put the worst players at the top. But I want to be able to sort by ranking, smallest to largest, to get the best players at the top.
Got it.
And there's a ton of other columns in here, but that again, like, I think as people get more comfort with it, they'll understand that the whole calculation process is in here and it's all unlocked. And if you want to understand it or see how it's working or even change it, you can do that. It's able to be edited. It's not like a software you might buy. Like, can't change Microsoft Word, but I can. You can edit the formulas if you see fit, or do whatever you want to do. It's all unlocked to understand how it's calculating these things. So like it's stepping through. This is that category, standings, gains, points over replacement level is what this is. So
Got it.
Again, this number doesn't mean anything. That's why I don't really use this, and I do include dollar values, even though maybe you're not in an auction. It's good to know Judge and Otani are $40 players. I don't know what a 18-point SGP player means, So
yeah. SGP over replacement. It's like war for fantasy, basically.
It is. Yeah, it is.
The value, I mean, the dollar values, this is very similar to, I mean, something that I've used a lot before and have pointed other people to, is the Fangraphs auction calculator, right? I mean, you can kind of do, I mean, it's much like simpler. You do it all just like on the Fangraphs website, but you choose whatever projection system you want, whatever size league it is, and it kind of spits out a dollar value, an auction value.
Yes.
But it's not using SGP. So I guess that's what's different. This is a little bit more kind of personalized to what the standings were in like a 15-team league from last year versus a 12-team league. So it kind of takes the auction calculator from Fangraphs, and not that there's anything wrong with that. It's a great, free tool for people to use. And this just kind of like builds off of it, or at least that's what I'm getting.
Yeah, those tools are great. Like there's a few of them out there and they're very good. I think Fangraphs uses Z-score. So at the beginning I said there's a couple different options of ways you can rank players. I think they use Z-scores, which is just like, it's going to give you similar, I think. But what is a little bit different is that not only is arguably SGP is tailored to a league format. So if you think that your league has intricacies, SGP maybe picks up on them that something like Z-scores doesn't. That's really just pure math, like doesn't understand any league context. But the other thing that this has that I think is very helpful is you can manipulate the projections now. Like, so when you go download the Fangraphs dollar values, I don't think, it's been a while since I used it, but I don't think you have a way to go in and say, let's pick a certain example here. So it's got, okay, Acuna is a good example, probably. He's projected for 24 steals. So if you go download that from the Fangraphs auction calculator, I think you're kind of stuck with 24. I could be wrong, but let's say we think he's 35 and we want to kind of see what is going to happen there. So what I can go do then is find him, and I'm just using some Control F to go search for Acuna. And if I find his steals, instead of 24, I'll say 35. Okay. So now if I come back to hitter ranks, it changes him to 35 steals. And then he all of a sudden moves up. I don't remember what he was before, but he must have been about $38. He's now much closer to being the number one player. So I think that's what is pretty interesting about this, is that, because one of the knocks on projections and SGP is people will say, well, they're too rigid, or people just are drafting by the spreadsheet. It's not fun. Projections can't identify breakouts or players that I think are gonna, hit their 90th percentile, some of these things. But here you can I think, accommodate those different stories and tweak this to what you think is going to happen. So I think you got to be pretty careful with that, to think that you're going to do it better than, Steamer or some of these other powerful projection systems might be a little misguided. But there are certain things, like I think how much Acuna is going to run is it's up for debate, right? So
Yeah.
if you have a strong stance on something, you can come in here, put it in, and go with that. So another example that I make a little easier to edit is really just playing time. So what I just showed you with editing steals, that's a little weird. You got to go back in the projections, find a player. Playing time I make way easier to edit. And so there's an example in here that I just found. It's yeah, Cam Nero. He's only projected for 522 plate appearances in here, but let's just say we want to kind of bump him up to what all the other top tier players is. If I just go 620, this will recalculate. Thinking a minute here. Okay, so now it's updated to 620 and everything. When you change plate appearances, everything else will adjust accordingly. So I don't need to go also change home runs, change runs and whatnot. So when I do that, he was somewhere around $22 player before, but now he shoots up to 31 and he's in the first round type hitter. So that's what I think is really powerful, because it's plate appearances are more of a guess than anything else is, right? Like I'm not going to say I can out project Steamer, the Bad X, in home runs for Caminero, but maybe I disagree with that playing total and I can just change that, and then everything else will update accordingly and I can go from there. And I feel way more comfortable putting my plate appearance guess in than because really plate appearance is like art more than it is science, and how much we think a pitcher is going to throw or a hitter is going to play is something that I want to maybe I do want to call my shots there and use it. And so that makes this I think really powerful. And if you kind of keep this going as you move along, from now until spring training, and if you're kind of grooming your own plate appearance things or innings pitch totals, you can keep going and downloading new projections. But to the extent that I've typed in 620 plate appearances here, that's going to stay, and I don't have to keep battling it with it each time I re-download a new projection or something. So
Yeah, no, that is super useful too, because I think from what I've heard and surmise from people who do projections is that the rate stats that they come up with are very accurate in terms of how often do players hit home runs per plate appearance. Like that is something that projections are very accurate with and very good at predicting and projecting. But the playing time, because then that's what kind of changes things. And I think that's from now until the start of the season, that is probably the thing that will change the most, is just the plate appearances. And we're going to learn throughout spring training, if Connor Griffin is up on opening day for the Pirates, boom, he could be a 500 plate appearance guy right away. You punch that in based on his projection, and that's going to spit out a completely different number. So those are just the things that are going to change. Like guys are going to get hurt. Hitters are going to get hurt. Other guys are going to step in. So then you can lower one guy's projected plate appearances, raise another guy's projected plate appearances. Pitchers are going to get hurt. So you can kind of like scrap that guy's innings. And then if there's like a sleeper or a prospect pitcher who's expected to make the rotation now, you can kind of update his innings. So that's really useful to know, because to me, that's probably the most volatile and the thing that's going to change most between now and opening day.
Yeah, I totally agree. It lets you make those last minute changes. And then like one thing that I want to kind of go back to is like the whole reason that I like this process of doing things is because how do I know? Like otherwise, if I'm just to guess, like, if the rookie's going to be up or not, I still don't know where to slot him. Like, okay, I think he's coming up, but I'm just wildly guessing what round to put him in. But this forces you to like actually put real numbers to it and say, okay, I think he's going to get 500 plate appearances. Everything else is kind of guessing 400. And if that's true, then it changes him from ranked 120 to 80. And then I know, like, okay, now I know where my viewpoint rates him, and I know where I should take him based on what I think. Whereas other people are just kind of guessing and playing by feel. And I think that if you force yourself through this kind of a process, that's where you'll start to make better decisions, know when you want to go after a guy, and know when, no, everybody's going too hard. I'm out now. So I think this just helps you make more sound decisions.
Got it. I don't know where you plan to go next, so I might be getting ahead of myself, but two things that have come to mind so far after just seeing how we upload the projections and it, spits out everything that we pretty much need to know is how can we kind of aggregate some of those projections? I know you have a tool for that. So if we want to like combine the bad X with ATC or whatever kind of projection system you want to use, how would we do that? And then obviously we just bring it in after we kind of aggregate. And then the other thing is like, I guess just seeing the tool like in a draft, like how do you mark off like which player is being drafted by what team? Or I guess like you said, you could just download draft results. I guess like how would we download and import those draft results if we're doing a slow draft or whatever? But again, you might have got there eventually. Maybe I'm just jumping ahead.
No, you're good. I wasn't going to show the aggregator, but let me get that pulled up because that's a good topic. And then I will also show how to mark off a player in a second. So we're loading. The aggregator takes a minute to work. So maybe I'll hold off on the aggregator and I will go show you how to mark a player off. So if you were to purchase this, I saw there's two versions that come in it. So when you say I want to buy the SGP tool, you get two. So one says with roster import, and that's the one that works similar to what we just showed about bringing in projections. So there's a way to, like I have NFBC draft results in here. And what that'll do is it'll go through, you set it up really the same way. So if I kind of go back to import setup, there's you say a little bit lower, it's saying what ID system has your roster data. So I have a tab called NFBC draft results, and there's not an ID on there. So it's just using, if I go look at what that looks like when you download it. Maybe they changed it because sometimes NFBC will add things, but like at least from last year, they didn't have an ID. So the only way to identify a player was on this like last name, comma, first name basis.
Right.
So on that import setup, there's an NFBC last name, first name option. So that's the way the IDs are. It's on that tab. And if I scroll down a little bit to the roster data, that last name, first name, the header on that column was just player. And then who's drafted them is team. So just to kind of go prove it. So player is where those IDs are, if you will. And then team is who drafted them. So this was my TGFBI draft from last year. And you can see it's kind of found it. So what that does as you go, I didn't show. So there's there's hitter ranks, which we looked at. There's pitcher ranks where you can override innings pitched. On each of those, as you scroll to the far right, it's telling you who drafted those players. So again, this is more for the slow draft example, but I'll show you the other one in a minute. And again, some little Excel things here. Like if I want to get rid of all the drafted players, I can use this filtering thing to only show me who's not been drafted, like the blanks.
Mm-hmm.
So I think these draft results are only through the third round or something. So these are the players that are left to pick. So in a slow draft, I can like just filter out who's been taken. Hitter ranks, pitcher ranks is the same kind of idea, but you can change innings pitched and everything will adjust accordingly. And that's not always the best way to draft because you want to maybe see all the players. So this combined ranks just really moves just the dollar value of those players over into one big list. So you can figure out who's next to draft between the two pools if you want. And so similarly, if the untaken players are, you can filter that out to here. So that's if you have the one where it's a slow draft. I will say, like, this is what you also would want to use in season. So if you're in a league where you have free agency period or fab, and you're trying to figure out who you want to pick up for the next week, you could take like rest of season projections and put them in here, or you could take next week's projections and put them in here, and it'll calculate values for the next week. And then you know, okay, I'm going to go stream this guy. Or I think this guy has season long value, so I'm going to pick him. So that's what this tool's for, because you don't every week want to have to go enter in all the guys that got drafted or picked up in fab last week. So you can just kind of download rosters and put them in here, and that'll work that way. If I go to the other version, so that's the with roster import. There's another one that's just called like the SGP tool, and it doesn't say with roster import. This would be more for a fast draft. It's loading. It takes a minute when I have these all.
You know what? You read my mind. That was my next question. Like, what do we do if we're in a fast draft? Because
well, that is a thing.
Harder, yeah.
That is a huge caveat that I will put on here. So this is really the same. It works exactly the same. The only thing different is that you need to work off of this combined ranks tab during the draft. So in a draft, you don't want to be flipping tabs. You don't want to be like filtering a bunch of stuff. So if you're in a fast draft and you're trying to keep up with things, here's where you can just like mark off like who got drafted and who's available. But as you can see, it's really not exactly like lightning quick. So you do have to make sure that you are comfortable with it and that you kind of know how it works. And that I would definitely like not go into this without having played around with it, made sure things seem like they're working fast enough for you. And that, because, you know, worst case scenario is you could just like print this out and start marking guys off in the draft or whatever, but you kind of want to know what you're going to do going in. I would hate for somebody to go in thinking it's going to work one way and then find out it's not. But the general, like all the setup and everything works the same way. And then just as you go along, you can mark guys off as being drafted.
Got it.
But you can see like that definitely does take a second. So that's why the slow draft one is way better. If you're in a slow draft or during the season, you really don't want to have to go be marking off all these guys all the time.
And you know what? If you're going to use it on a fast draft, maybe try it with a mock draft first.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think because I've got some of these open, it's taking a little bit longer, but it's definitely something to be careful about. Yeah, I agree with that. Got it. So that's the difference between the two SGP tools that come. Now let me show the aggregator.
I did just have one other follow-up, I guess, before you close out the roster import one. I believe you still have one open, right?
Yep.
So when you're drafting, I see on the bottom there's a tab, projected standings. Is there a way to, like, when you go there, just see what your team needs the most? Like, hey, I'm lacking in steals. Will it? So yeah, I mean, it seems like it'll kind of show up that way.
Yeah. So like, I don't. Maybe there are about 20 rounds in here. It looks like, because this is, you know, really zoomed in, but looks like most of the team, and again, this is last year's draft results with this year's projections, so there could be some weird things going on here, but it's got, you know, players drafted. Oh, and then the other thing is, remember how this is working off names? That the NFBC draft results are just names, they're not IDs. So this does have a problem with Will Smiths and Luis Garcias and Max Muncy's. So I'm going to guess this guy has one of those players on his team, type of thing. So it marked off more players as drafted than you would have otherwise done. But yeah, it's going to show you like your team average batting average, how many home runs you have. If that's hard to process on the fly. It also calculates the standings for you to show like this team has a lot of batting average, runs, homers, and steals, but looks like they're RBIs, but they're kind of neglecting steals, it looks like. So yeah, you can eyeball things as you go and realize, okay, I need to draft some steals, or I'm behind in strikeouts type thing. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Okay, so the aggregator works behind this concept that, if we're talking about the spectrum of how do I improve more and more and more and try to squeeze more juice out of this every season. I don't know if I'd start with the aggregator, but if once you get comfortable like with the SGP thing and want to move on to another thing, I do think aggregating projections is a really good idea. It's really like, I'm sure most people are familiar with aerial ATC projections. That is really the whole idea behind what he's doing there. He's aggregating on a whole other dimension than what I'm going to show you here. He's taking like category by category and finding out the best way to aggregate that one category, I think.
Yeah.
Which is not quite what this is going to do, but I'll tell you what this does in a second. But the whole principle there is that when you have different smart people, I'll say, trying to do projections in different ways, like they all have a slightly different way of doing it. When you take that wisdom of the crowds, if you will, then when you combine those together, they are almost always going to be better than if you just took one of those smart people's way of doing it. Now, when wisdom of the crowd or aggregate, you have to be a little careful that all of the people are doing it different ways. You don't want to like double count. Like, so for one example, even though I might do this, I'm pretty sure that like Rudy at Rasball uses Steamer heavily as an input, but then he like tweaks it. So you might want to be careful with using like pure Steamer and Rasball, because you might be double counting some things. And I might be being a little unfair to him because I don't exactly know all that he does to change Steamer, but that's just like one example there. Or playing time might be another one, because if you download like the Fangraphs projections, some of those different systems use the exact same playing time. So if you're trying to get like a different playing time estimate, you want to be careful not to double or triple count those playing time projections, because they're really coming from like the same, I think, roster resource type projection underneath them. Whereas I know like Zips at Fangraphs is calculated in a wholly different way. I think that is more of like a computer formula algorithm type thing, looking at past history and different things and coming at it a different way. So that might be a good one to include in your playing time projection, because it's very different than one person guessing. So what I'm really getting at is aggregating is good. You got to be a little bit careful with it, not to double count things. But if you take, I know that some of the Fangraphs ones, like there's Oopsie, the Bad X, Zips, Steamer, those all I believe are very different methods of coming up with a projection. And so it for the like skills of that, it would make sense to include all of them in an aggregate, because you're gonna somehow find a way to improve on all of them. Like if you combined them all together, they'd come out better than just one on their own. And that's really what I think Ariel is kind of taking advantage of by doing those types of combinations. And so this works very similarly to the SGP tool, but I will say this one's got a couple slight differences. So one thing that you'll see, and I don't, because like a lot of projections are like behind a paywall, I don't include like everything in here for free. So you are going to probably want to have like different memberships that will allow you to go download different projections. But if you have that and you bring them in, you're going to follow that same principle of like putting them on their own tab in here. And then you're going to say what that tab name is. But here you have to do a little bit more work. So you do have to like go look at that tab and see like how wide does it go. So on Steamer Hit, for example, goes from A to BV. So then if I look at my settings, it's okay, A to BV. I was talking about weighting. So you could say like, I don't want to take playing time from something, but I only want skills. And this gives you a different way of like coming up with how you're going to average those out. So if there was something you didn't want to double count, you could like say, okay, I'm going to give 0 for playing time for, depth charts or whatever other projection I might have in here, but I do want the skills from it. And then here, similarly, you have to pick the ID system. But on this one, I just haven't had time to make them all consistent. But here, your IDs have to be in the first column. So just the way that this works, I had to move the ID from all the way over on the right to over to here. So that's one subtle difference. But again, there's instructions that handle this. But those are Fangraphs IDs. And then what this will do, so if you went through, you can put up to 5 things in here. If you follow those principles and those instructions, what it'll do is it will give you like the averaged aggregated projections for them. And there's a tab in here too, like if you wanted to look up a hitter, it would pull in, like if you had 5 in here, it would show you all 5 of them and what the differences were between them. And then I have instructions on if you wanted to do that, you can essentially kind of take these and then pick up where we left off on the SGP. So you could copy and paste these over into the SGP file, use them as your projection, and then work downstream from that. But again, like if I were to start with something, I think the lowest hanging fruit is to just get into some kind of a ranking SGP type system. That lets you customize playing time and have a sense for the movements you're making in players. And then I think a next step after that, once you get comfortable with feeling that that's pretty good, then going on to aggregating projections would be another good step after that.
Yeah, I think the thing that I've taken away more than anything today is honestly, it's really good for just creating your own objective rankings, right? And it's like objective quotation marks on that because you are inputting your own playing time. If you want to change playing time, maybe you just trust projections completely and you want to go based on that. But if you want to change playing time and things like that, it will then spit out an objective ranking based on, okay, this person has 600 plate appearances. This is what their stat line should be. And, this is their projected auction value. When you consider all those things, then this is where that player would rank. So it's like, you are adding, I guess, some subjectivity into like how much you think a player is going to play. But after that, it's just like all math that takes over and pretty much just ranks the players for you. So, I mean, that I think in itself is super useful. And then once you have like the rankings of the players, like you said, I mean, if you don't want to, chance it, I guess, and fall behind in a fast draft, you could just print out those rankings yourself or just take those rankings and kind of move them onto, I guess, a different sheet and just kind of, follow that. But that's the thing I think that's probably the most useful out of like, if anyone's just jumping in for the first time and they want to use this, to me, that's, I think, one of, if not the most useful tools here.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's really a good way to put it, is that it gives you a good solid ranking. And if you're going to deviate from that, then that's fine. Just in the back of your head, you should be saying like, oh, the projections are telling me something else, which is fine. Maybe that's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
But it's just a little bit of a, hey, devil or angel on your shoulder, like, should you be going that far? Or like, it just keeps you a little more grounded. So that's how I would recommend using these. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's good timing too, because we actually have Ariel Cohen coming on the podcast tomorrow. So, he, as you mentioned, has his ATC projections, and it really is an aggregate of what each projection system does best, and then just kind of puts that all together. So we'll get his thoughts more on that on the podcast tomorrow. But obviously, you can just download the ATC projections and throw them in this tool as well if you wanted to go that route. I think that's totally a way that you can do that. I don't know if you had anything else on this particular tool that you wanted to touch on, but the last thing I guess I was going to ask you about is if you can, I guess, just a quick walkthrough on how to do it for a points league, because we do have a lot of head-to-head points league players as well.
Yeah. So again, everything's really the same. there's two versions. There's like the normal one where you would mark players off. There's one where if you're in a like best ball slow draft or whatever, you could download and import those. Let me get open the points tool here. But really, like the first two tabs of the SGP thing are almost exactly the same. The only difference is that instead of the area where you type in the standings gains points, so on league setup, you type in the points per, your point settings basically. So if you get penalized for an at bat, I think, or strikeout or whatever, you put a negative in, and if it's a positive event, you put in a positive number, and it fills that out for you. One thing I did gloss over a little bit, this can be flexible too for different roster rules. So if you don't have 5 outfielders or don't use corners, whatnot, you can change that and adjust this, and then those values adjust accordingly to whatever you said your league rosters are as well. So
Got it. Yeah, that all seems pretty doable. Was there anything else that you wanted to, I guess, show us or promote, I guess, before we wrap things up?
no, I just you can look at these a little more closely if you want on the website. Thank you for doing this. I've never really spent the time to make a really great video that shows this. So I think it's really helpful for people to see. I do have a couple of quick videos on the site that you could see if you want to look a little more closely. Comes with instructions. Yeah, and then also the process is out. I don't contribute in writing anymore. Jeff kind of works with a new team of writers each year to fill out the appendix, but this year's version's another good one. It's been out for a little bit, and it's got like bunch of new studies that those folks did to study strategy, hitting projections, pitching, and then we have a lot of information in the back, like maybe to tie it back together. In the back of that appendix, we do include the SGP for all the different kind of formats we can think of. So if you're in an AL only, NL only, OBP, like I mentioned at the beginning, it's a little bit of homework to calculate your own standings if you need to for SGP, and you don't want to use just like the off-the-shelf ones that I give you. There's way more at the back of the process that we just pre-calculate for you and give everybody just what those standings look like, and then what the SGP are for all of them too. So
yeah, all right, that sounds great. Again, people, if you want to find this yourself, it's smartfantasybaseball.com. I've had the page up here. You can see what Tanner was just talking about, the actual book, the process here, just the updated 2026, or if you want the full version, which goes into a little bit more detail, I think like the making of and some of the other background things that you need to know. And then all the tools that we just kind of went through, the automated SGP ranking tool, which is what you would want to use for a roto league, the points ranking tool if you want to play in a best ball or head-to-head points league, something like that, and then the projection aggregator if you want to get down to the nitty-gritty and just kind of take on the next step, the next progression, I guess, in trying to make your own projections or whatever it might be, or just combining a bunch of different projection systems that you can find. But thank you so much, Tanner. I know like we've been kind of planning this for a while now, and I'm happy that it finally came together. And all along you were kind of like, I don't know, like this is kind of nerdy stuff. I don't know how much people are going to care about it, but you know what? People have asked me about it before, and I think you'll be surprised. We're probably going to get a lot of views on this, a lot of comments, people asking questions and stuff. I think it's actually going to be pretty useful tool for people to have in their possession. So thank you so much for doing this.
yes, thank you for having me. It's been a blast. Appreciate
All
it.
right. Make sure to follow Tanner on X at SmartFantasyBB, and we are going to wrap there. For Tanner, I am Frank. Thanks as always for tuning in to Fantasy Baseball today. Please make sure to follow and leave a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify. I guess this is only on YouTube, so like, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. And we will be back again tomorrow with Ariel Cohen. Bye-bye.